Microsoft acquires Bethesda. It's big.
September 21st. Where were you Monday when Microsoft officially announced that they acquired gigantic game publisher Bethesda?
So Bethesda has been around for quite some time. They started off with sports games, then they started making the Elder Scrolls games, and they got very popular from there. Bethesda acquired the Doom license from id, and Fallout from can't remember. So Bethesda has grown to be a very big player in the video game market. They release many titles.
They have a soiree of products. Games.
They're big titles though. The Elder Scrolls games, so Skyrim, the Fallout games, currently New Vegas, the Wolfenstein games. The most recent one was Part 2, New Colossus, in that kind of like reboot of the series. They have the Doom reboot and Doom Eternal. And then they do smaller releases as well. But those are big name games that generally become the topic of conversation, whether it's good or bad, for quite some time when they are released. So Microsoft acquiring this is not small. Microsoft, especially in the discussions of the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, Microsoft has looked a little skimpy in the games department, especially when it comes to things that are exclusive to their console. They just haven't had a whole lot to show. The $299 Series S, despite being less powerful, is still something that is appealing to a lot of people at that price point, and it gives them an easy entry into, quote unquote, next generation gaming. But for what reason? Well, now it looks like that people might have a reason to do so. Microsoft Chief Executive Officer Satya Nadella in an interview says, with the acquisition of Bethesda, we metaphorically and literally double our gaming content capacity.
Jesus.
I think it could only be one of those two, but whatever.
It's going to increase.
It's going to increase.
A lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot bigger deal than putting out Battletoads.
Sure. Yeah. So they've been Microsoft has spent somewhere around $2.5 billion. They spent $2.5 billion to purchase the maker of Minecraft in 2014. They acquired 6 studios in 2018, one last year. So they have, been trying to get a stable of reasons for people to buy their system. There are a couple of games. Bethesda's history with Microsoft is actually pretty good. When you go back and you look at some of their earlier, some of the stuff, even you go back to the 360 generation, Microsoft's version of the Orange Box compared to the PlayStation 3 version was a much better version. It was way less buggy. And when Bethesda announced that they were going to start allowing mods for their games like Skyrim and Fallout and whatnot, Microsoft was far more into the idea.
Sure.
Sony did not play ball with them very easily on that. I think it's.
We talked about that, didn't we?
We did. Yeah, we did talk about that a couple of years ago. I think it's the difference of a U.S. company versus a Japanese company.
Sure. Not understanding the modding community.
Not understanding necessarily the modding community and the fear of having the system be too open.
Sure.
So Microsoft and Bethesda, they were pretty tight there. That said, they were working with Sony. They have 2 games that are still they're going to debut on the PlayStation 5, and they are still going to be timed exclusives to the PlayStation 5. So that deal is being honored. Those games are Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo. However, future games like Starfield will be available for Xbox, PC, and Microsoft's Game Pass.
We didn't mention how much they bought the Bethesda for.
$7.5 billion
in cash.
That's crazy.
Not stock options or cash, which we'll get into why this is a huge deal and why I saw some people try to downplay this a little bit, like not many companies could pull off this deal. There's probably a handful in the world that could have done this, Microsoft being one of it. And this is why this is important, is that this deal, they can lose money on this deal for 15, 20 years and not care.
Sure.
That's why this is significant. So I actually did my pat financial research about Microsoft. Microsoft has a market cap of $1.5 trillion at least. $1.5 trillion. They have, before this deal, I saw they had at least $130 billion in cash on hand. That from what I saw is probably number one in the world for having actual cash on hand, meaning like this is liquid cash. We can just throw it at you.
Go to the dollar box and grab it, and there you go.
Disney is worth about how much cash Microsoft has on hand. That we're talking scales of companies here. Like this is it's hard to think about how big of a company Microsoft is when you put it in that perspective.
Sure.
So this deal to them, when you look at it as well, this is a risky proposition, or they can't make. It doesn't matter if they make their money back on this in the next even 20. It doesn't matter. This deal to them, like when you looked at like Disney buying Star Wars, that's a much bigger risk to a company like Disney than them spending double the amount to get Bethesda here. And we can get into the nuts and bolts of that. Why on paper it's actually not that huge of an investment when you look at how many games some of these properties have sold.
Sure. So it'll be interesting to see what they do and how some of these bigger properties are handled. Namely, I would say Fallout and Elder Scrolls. So Microsoft owns another very big game in Minecraft that we mentioned. They bought that for $2.5 billion a few years back, and that still appears on other consoles. It appears on. You can get it on the PlayStation. You can get it on the Switch. It's on PC, obviously.
That makes sense because that fan base was established everywhere. You can't just like pull it back as an exclusive. That'd be weird.
So
you're losing money.
They do say here that when it comes to games in the future, they will take other consoles on a case-by-case basis. So I don't think that means necessarily that you won't be able to get Elder Scrolls on your PlayStation 5. But what it does mean is that it's probably going to absolutely be timed exclusive, and they could always hold it back as an exclusive if they really wanted to move systems.
It's up to them.
It's up to them. But I don't know that. So I'm not downplaying it. This is a big acquisition, but I also don't think for people who are extraordinarily anti-Microsoft or like I would never buy. I don't think they need to panic yet about whether or not they're going to be able to play Fallout or Elder Scrolls or something like that. But who knows?
I don't know.
They can.
Here's the deal, though. Well, you talk about Skyrim. I'm trying to find how many it's sold to date. By 2014, Skyrim sold 20 million copies. Well, 20 million copies.
It's insane. It's sold 20 million copies, but it's going to be hard to see exactly. Skyrim is like the current joke game. Like, does it run Doom? The current joke is, does it play Skyrim? Because Skyrim's been ported to fucking everything. So yes, these games are moneymakers, but they're moneymakers because not only are they popular, but because you can buy it on literally anything you own.
Sure, but my point is that game alone will get a chunk of their investment back over time.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Just that one game, and there's 4 or 5 other of these big properties that aren't as big as Skyrim, but Doom is still pretty freaking big.
Then Fallout is big.
Fallout is big.
Even with its major stumble in '76, there are still people out there playing it.
Wolfenstein is fairly big. I don't know if the sequel did as good as the first reboot, but Wolfenstein's a pretty big property. I don't know about Dishonored or Prey, how big those are at this point in time, but they're not. They're names.
People buy them and play them.
Yeah. So I memean, don't worry about Microsoft's investment. Like, that's not the issue here. What are they actually saying here? What they're saying is, well, I'm not saying this is them. What's the expression? People like now they're slapping their dick on the table. But if they could have made this purchase, they can acquire almost any company they want to in the video game realm. I'm trying to think of how much Rockstar would be worth in terms of billions, but if they really wanted to, they could acquire anyone. Sony couldn't do these deals. Sony's not on the level of how big a company Microsoft is. They don't have the cash Microsoft has. They can't compete if it really came down to like a war like that. But what this is also saying is that they're obviously serious about their new console, and they're serious about Game Pass. And this is a seller. I mean, people all of a sudden said, wow, okay, If you put the new Elder Scrolls on Game Pass some capacity, I mean, everyone who wants that game is going to go get the Game Pass. They're gonna get it. Or even if it's I'm thinking, well, even if it's not for free on Game Pass, what if you say, well, if you get Game Pass, we're going to give it to you for only $30 instead of $70 on PS5. They could do something like that. The value proposition will be insane.
Could, but they would be more likely to do that through gold, which is how they normally do the sales. If you have gold, you can get it for X amount.
Whatever they decide, they can. You have an incentive to have it be so much cheaper on your system, if you so wish. But you can keep it on PlayStation, sure, and sell whatever copies. But this becomes more of a value proposition to get the Series S or Series X. I looked at this and I'm like, okay, if this comes out and I get a $300 Series S and I got to pay only now whatever it is per month for whatever gold and or the pass, it's a no-brainer to someone like me to get AAA titles that will cost me $60 or now $70 each for next generation on the Xbox. It's just a no-brainer. So you can see why they announced this literally only 3-4 days after Sony's thing, because this is now what everyone's talking about. Is this deal?
Yeah, big stuff.
I mean, I'm trying to think of another deal in games that would be as big as a deal as this. You can say Rockstar, but Rockstar only has their few titles they put out once every 5-6 years on rotation. I mean, they can pump out games for Bethesda every year. A different IP can come out. They can be like Nintendo. They can stagger them out. Just
sure.
About.
I think Rockstar would be big, but yeah, I mean, whereas if you look at Bethesda 10 years ago, I think it would kind of be similar to Rockstar. A couple of big name games.
Sure.
Your Fallouts, your Elder Scrolls. Doom wasn't acquired yet at that point in time.
They had the id stuff.
Rockstar.
Oh, they have Quake as well. That's right.
Rockstar does, the Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption. So it's got those big ones. But Rockstar has spent so much time keeping Grand Theft Auto Online going,
that's because printing money.
Rockstar is very big, but they have not acquired as much or branched out as much, I guess, as Bethesda has, is all I'm trying to say.
They're not as diversified. Their portfolio of games, we'll just say.
Yes.
They have their two. Is there even a third big one left with Rockstar? Or down to two at this point that they really care about?
No.
Are they bringing back Midnight Club? I love Midnight Club.
Lots of people like Midnight Club.
Bring back Midnight Club.
They haven't done one of those in a while.
Midnight Club, what? It's been like 7 years?
The last one was LA, which was, I think the last one was LA, which was I'm not even sure that got a PS4 or Xbox One release.
So the point remains is that like Bethesda has more games in a portfolio. It'll make more money than Rockstar. As weird as that, over the 10 or so different properties that they pick up here, So yeah, it's a huge deal. It's like Disney getting Marvel and Star Wars. Like it's like that in terms of video games. I mean, I'm not going to get into the people arguing, well, you don't want a monopoly of one parent company owning all those umbrella companies, but it's like, well, what are you going to do? There's a lot of rich people now that worked at Bethesda that are happy about this, and stockholders that are obviously thrilled about this deal that went through. And yeah, so I don't know how this is going to affect sales of the Xbox, but like I said, like I'm probably going to get a Series S and see what it does. It's worth the $300 risk to see what the Xbox is going to offer. Oh yeah, and plus, obviously, then this deal, these games means Microsoft makes money off them on Windows and on Steam. So, yeah.
All right.
We'll make a bet if you think that if Elder Scrolls, the next one, comes out on PlayStation or not. I'm like 50-50 thinking about it. I'm like, they'll make money on it, but if they really want to turn the screws on Sony, they say none of this is coming out on Sony consoles, and Sony will be like, shit.
I think it comes out later, but I think it comes out.
Maybe like a year later or something like that, or 6 months later, just to be like, hey.
It's usually about a 6-month window.
But even that will piss off some people, or they don't want to wait 6 months.
Oh, sure.
So
play it on your PC.
And it'll be full price, and on Xbox, I can give you a little discount if they want, maybe. A bit cheaper. There's no Sony tax when you get it through Big Daddy Microsoft. All right, is that it?
That's it.